the Smart City Challenge, a UN and World Smart City Organization perspective.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our discussion today. I'm Rachel McIntosh. I'm a journalist and podcast host at Finance Magnates, and I am so pleased to be joined today by two of the world's leading experts on smart cities and smart city technology. So I'll reintroduce them now, and then I'll give them a moment a little bit more about themselves. So first, we have with us Renato, Castro, who is a smart city expert and the author of the book Cities Smart Up, and Marcelo Garcia, who is a smart cities expert with the UN Economic Commission for Europe and with the IEFE's PPP Cities Initiative. Marcelo is also the founder at wisdomaccelerator.org and a TEDx speaker. So I'll ask you both to talk a little bit more about yourselves and the work that you do, starting with Renato.
Hello, everyone. Great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rachel. Marcelo, pleasure to be with you on the stage again. Now, just for curiosity, I met Marcelo first time on a stage in France for MIT event, and we were three guys from Rio de Janeiro in a French event. So it was really interesting situation when we met last time. I'm living in Italy now. I've been working for the last 18 years with technologies applied to urban development. And I had a quite, let's say, intense experience the last 8 months with the pandemic. I've been working as a volunteer for the Italian government task forces to try to mitigate the problem here. And it was a very, very nice experience in terms of understanding that smartness is not everything that we need. We also need a lot of resilience. And I think we're going to talk a lot about this during our talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Renato. And Marcelo, can you talk a little bit about yourself?
As Renato mentioned, I'm also from Rio. I spent more than half of my life living in Europe. I've been in Switzerland for the last 15. And my background is in telecommunications. So I started deploying very large-scale digital television platforms. Then that shifted into very large-scale Wi-Fi platforms. And that's basically how I ended up getting involved with the United Nations, trying to bring affordable Wi-Fi to the poorest countries in the world via a nonprofit that is based in Geneva called Broadlight. That nonprofit evolved into, strangely enough, another nonprofit that is about a conference series in the blockchain and crypto space that was quite popular in 2017 to 2018 during the boom period. And we got mentions in The Economist, Financial Times, two-page article in the Handelszeitung, which is a big finance newspaper here in Switzerland. And that conference series, which is called Crypto Explorers, eventually evolved into a version for teenagers, if you believe it, which is Wisdom Accelerator. So I used a format that we had with up to 40 crypto professionals from around the world that fly to Switzerland to spend 3-4 days having discussions about what's next and having meetings with companies that are locally based. And that became basically a week-long conference for teenagers from around the world who would meet in Davos during the World Economic Forum and have conversations with people present there for that event. Now, that has been clearly, very much impacted by COVID, but that's, I guess, a topic for further down the line in our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have to talk about that Wisdom Accelerator later. That's cool. So let's speaking of COVID, so obviously this has had a huge impact on just about every corner of our lives. I want to ask you a little bit specifically, both of you, about how the pandemic has influenced the work that you're doing. So Renato, I know that you worked for 6 months in 2 coronavirus task forces, in Italy. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how this has influenced your work?
Yeah, well, actually, I am 5 kilometers far from ground zero, where we had the first red zone here in Italy. It was the first in Europe. So it was, the city that is just our neighbors. I live in a very small city in Italy, around 5,000 inhabitants, in the countryside of Padova, northeast Italy. And that was my last trip. I was in Dubai. I used to travel a lot, but by chance, this was a family trip. We left exactly on the 22nd of February when we had the first case here and the first death. And we spent just 1 week in Dubai, and it was really, really complicated because every day we were following the news, and the airports were closing, and everybody was starting to avoid the Italians and avoid to come to Italy. Qatar Airlines had closed with flights to Italy, and we were in the flying Emirates, so we were quite desperate. We got to return home, and the 27th of February, and after that, everything, evolved very, very fast. And my first reaction, it was much more as a parent, harder than as a smart city expert. I called the school. We realized that school was not coming back, and we were just coming out from the last holidays, the carnival holidays. So the kids were with that feelings that they didn't understand what was happening. It was still holidays, and how to keep the kids entertained at home and also keep studying. So I called the institute. We have a big institute here with 7 schools, like an umbrella for 7 schools, public schools. And I offered my help. And from, I don't know, day 5, we started already trying to bring all these traditional public educational infrastructure, Italian infrastructure, to digital. They were, now we are a little bit better, but they were completely analogic. Even the teachers, they didn't have social media profile. I mean, it's a little bit against here. They till now, or till the pandemic, it was something like against education here in Italy. I mean, social media and internet, it was something that public schools were trying to avoid. My kid was not allowed to bring any digital device to school because it would disturb the others. It was really a very old mind or traditional mindset. So in 1 week, we got to put all these classes online, first using Facebook. It was the main resource that everybody would get access theoretically for free. And after that, in a volunteering basis, we got a lot of companies supporting, and we got a platform that we went online. We got to buy with the donations around 70 iPads for the families would need. They didn't have technology, and also Apple supported from California supported the project here. So it was a good interaction with the community. I was doing what I've been doing for the last 20 years, but I was doing in my community and much more as a citizen rather than an expert. It was a good experience too. Yeah, and it was very clear what I've been discussing my whole life, that smart city is about people. Smart city is a consequence of a smart society that is evolving. And here we could feel these in a very short period of time, but a boom. It was good in this sense.
Yeah,
if you can bring something good from the bad.
Definitely. And that's just a case in point, perfect example of how this technological infrastructure can be so important, especially in these times of crisis. Marcelo, I want to ask you also how this pandemic has influenced your work. So you have kind of this angle, having to do with the UN. What's the situation at the moment with the UN when it comes to, for example, funding some of the smart city projects that are underway at the moment?
Yeah, I'll just first refer to the contrast between Italy and Switzerland. Here, they were fully connected. The kids started having classes from home. There was a little bit of a shutdown in terms of let's see what's going on. Lots of financial support. In fact, startups would get $1 million loans, or Swiss francs, which is equivalent to $1 million. Just as a COVID loan, close to 0 interest. I mean, the government was absolutely fantastic. It was clearly not the intensity and the scale of the problems that I had in Italy, specifically in Renato's region, but I was mightily impressed at how good they were at handling the situation here. Now, I do tend to travel. I guess Renato is one of the few people who travel as much as I do. We kind of compare our different flights. It's up to 95% of the time for me, and I've been to 125 countries. So usually I'm always on the road. And after Davos this year, which is at the end of January, everything was canceled, like starting with the Mobile World Congress. And that's usually where I catch up with Renato, and we could not do it this time. And all of a sudden, the United Nations here in Geneva shut down completely. I went there last week to try to get my accreditation because I just joined an NGO accredited with ECOSOC as a board member. So I get the little blue badge that gives me a higher level of access. And I even managed to convince the security guards to give it to me, even though I was not supposed to get into the building unless I had meetings, right? And those can be arranged. You can just call a friend and say, find a way of getting me in. But there's just close to nothing. Like usually when you look at the website or the board that they have at the entrance, there are dozens, if not hundreds of events listed. Now we have maybe 3, like things that absolutely must happen. They're all internal people. They're in the building anyway, and everything else got canceled. So today there's a big event that has been shifted online called the WISIS, the World Summit and Information Society. Everything is online. They decided to spread it over several months so that you have those gatherings, trying to gain traction and give people more time to revise whatever documentation is being discussed. But it's not the same. You don't have the dynamic, you don't have the serendipity, and it's really quite a shame, and it's having a major impact in terms of the efficiency of what the United Nations is capable of doing. And you have lots of sidetrack activities, right? So I'm at the moment planning several ways to catch up on this gap that has been created. One of the projects that I'm developing is sailing around the whole of the Caribbean, stopping in every single country and dependency with a group of investors. So in certain circumstances, so that if you're in a boat or in a series of boats and they respect distance rules, you could have those investors going from country to country, having meetings in hotels and meeting local entrepreneurs and government representatives to get back that mojo of meeting people and understanding if the chemistry is right, and maybe should have a follow-up conversation, and doing that in a very efficient way, so that spending maybe 2 or 3 months just sailing around a really nice region of the world, it shouldn't be too hard to get investors interested in doing that. I was talking about doing something similar in the Pacific, but the distances are too great. So in this case, it would be headquartered as an initiative in Honolulu, because we have some good connections there, and we'll be going to different locations in the Pacific, trying to bring business opportunities from the perspective of a smart city, right? So how can you finance solar panel replacements? And those conversations, they tend to take a very long time. And the pandemic is not making it any easier, because if you don't get to meet the right people with the right level of introductions, and you understand that this is a person you really want to work with, everything gets delayed. If delayed is not frozen, right? You go like, nah, let's just talk about this later. We're okay for now, so no rush. When in fact there is a rush from a climate change perspective in many cases, or an efficiency perspective in many others. And that's one of the things that I'm working on. And from a personal angle, as Renato mentioned a little bit of what happened in the city, I live in a village with 750 inhabitants. We don't even have a supermarket or a church. Can you imagine, like, an European city that doesn't have a church? It's really quite small. And I used this opportunity to complete a project that I started last year, which is ended up being losing 250,000 calories, which is equivalent to 37 kilos. So it's about 40% of my body mass. So I'm a little bit slimmer than I was
I can see. I
last year.
almost didn't recognize you.
Yeah, and I used to have a massive beard like this as well. And this project is actually quite serious. So I just finished a 50-day fast, or 50, and I'm trying to combine extreme fasting with 0 calories, as in eating nothing for 50 days or 7 weeks, and then extreme physical exertion. So I attempted, when I did a 21-day fast last year, I did a marathon on week 2. So there was 2 weeks without any food, and then I do a marathon. And that was just to figure out how it works. I'm talking about that because lots of people were impacted by COVID the other way around. They just gained the calories. I lost 250,000 of them over a year. And so 21 days plus a marathon was fine. This time I tried to do 7 weeks of 50 days and an ultra marathon at the end, and I managed to do half because I reached my limit. Then I started eating again, and then I did ultra marathon, and I'm training to climb Mont Blanc in 2 or 3 weeks before the season is over for this year. And the objective here is to go to certain extremes. When people say, "Oh no, I can't spend more than half a day without food," like I spent 50 days without food, and a week later I did a half marathon. I mean, on day 48, I did 25 kilometers, which is not nothing, but no, I could not complete my objective. And the point is, if a human who's writing an article or a book is capable of doing that today with all the measurements, with the super smart watch that tells me everything that is going on with me, and the impedance scale, and measuring the ketone and sugar levels. I even have a little thing here on my arm stapled that tells me what's my sugar level anytime that I want to know. So I have all this data, and the point is diabetes, and we're getting into a different kind of disease here, but one that is very strongly linked to COVID morbidity. Diabetes is gaining 100 million people every year, and in the poorest countries in the world, if you don't have money to buy insulin, it's a death sentence. And
yeah, and actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have just a couple minutes left here, so I want to get into that point a little bit further. And Renato, maybe I'll start with you on this one. Having to do with the way that technology can be used to improve health, particularly in developing countries and in countries that are particularly influenced by diseases such as diabetes in the United States of America, for example. How can the smart city technology be used, to help improve health, both in relation to this pandemic and also these other existing health problems that are everywhere in the world?
Yeah, I think actually with the pandemic, I see 3 important trends that they were just catalyzed by the pandemic. It was already happening, but now they are much faster. So first of all, we are going more and more and more local. So we had the globalization peak already reached. We have to rethink a lot, mainly the way that we are generating and distributing wealthy. And now I think that government and people will start focus more locally. It was already happening, now it's accelerating. Second, I see technology now, we are going to keep these virtual cycle of investments in new technologies, but on technologies that make sense to make life better. So probably very huge projects like leaving Mars, or I don't know, flying cars, they will not be so invested as, daily useful technology. You see now Zoom is worth more than the 7 largest air companies all put it together. So, and Zoom makes sense. So that's what I see. So we are going to be super local and hyper technological, and I think that this combination will bring us a lot of urban solutions, and can enhance quality of life. And the last trend that was already happening too, but I see now getting spinning off, is the trend of cities becoming very playing a very important role in the world. Probably cities are becoming more important than the main countries. So you see the whole of London in Europe, and in the whole Brexit, you see now cities in the United States that are quite independent in the way they think and they act against Trump administrations, and so on. And now I see that we are also reaching a moment that small cities can also have protagonism. So the age of cities that we had, the city states that we had in the past, I think that we are coming on, and of course now empowered with all these technology. But just to conclude my point, we should bring together smartness with resilience. We saw that big cities they were referenced in the smart city ranks as London, as Barcelona, as New York. They suffered a lot with the pandemic because they had a lot of smartness, they had a lot of technology, but they didn't have resilient systems to face this problem that was a sanitary and health problem. But imagine if it was, for example, a pandemic, a digital pandemic, virus, or something like this. Do we have cybersecurity in this level of resilience to protect us against this? So I think that this will be a recurrent topic now in the smart city world.
Absolutely. And Marcelo, we have about 1 minute left. Do you have any brief thoughts in response to that?
I completely agree with everything you said. It's the overall answer. I am a big fan of the city-states concept. Italy has a huge tradition when it comes to that, right? So the fact is, all politics tend to be local, and when you don't have the mobility element, people stay more in the city. They care more about it. They can see the problems more. And they start taking action, as Renato did, as much as he could with the skills that he had. And I'm now trying to focus on making sure that once the wave is over, all the projects can be financed as quickly as possible. I'm in a task force organized by the ITU called United for Smart Sustainable Cities, and those discussions are going on. So we're just trying to make sure that information keeps on flowing, and that we're enabling cities, smaller ones especially, to have access to the decision elements so that they can keep on doing things at the local level, building stronger, more sustainable communities. And once the pandemic abates, then the money to be able to do the bigger projects, the massive replacements, in the larger scales, things that will require national, at least state level participation, they can be done quite smoothly. So yeah, what Renato said is perfectly aligned with my thoughts.
Okay, wonderful. Renato and Marcelo, I want to thank you so much on behalf of AIBC, and also just personally, it's been so interesting to talk to you. I wish you both all of the best in your pursuits.
Oh, thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
All the best for the event.